Discover 4 sinister and unexplainable stories that will haunt you forever. Revealed secrets await. Carla staggered through her front door, gasping for breath, the day's exhaustion wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. Busy streets of Maple Grove were silent now, shadows creeping up her porch steps. It was supposed to be home, a sanctuary, but she felt something lurking just beyond the threshold. As she reached out to touch the door, her fingers grazed over crude symbols carved into the wood, disfigured shapes that sent cold dread through her spine. Panic clawed at her throat as she whispered, "What the hell?" A single light flickered in the dining room, a siren call to the shadows surrounding her. When the kids were tucked away, she spotted it. A note slid neatly under the door. "Keep your eyes open," it warned. Carla felt a chill creep across her skin. It was signed by Linda, her neighbor, the one person she thought she could trust. But what did it mean? Heart racing, she pushed the thought aside. These were good streets, with backyard barbecues and smiles exchanged on porches. Or so she told herself. Over the next few nights, an unsettling sensation settled into her bones. Sam spoke of whispers echoing through the walls, shadowy forms darting outside his window, flickering motion just out of sight. "It's just your imagination, buddy," she reassured him with a forced smile, but the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Lily wouldn't step off the porch, her shrieks piercing the quiet dusk whenever Carla mentioned the playground. Familiar laughter turned to silence, an invisible predator stalking her means of comfort. Desperation festered, leading Carla straight to the police station, clutching their dismissive attitudes like stones in her gut. "Nothing to worry about, ma'am," the officer quipped, with a condescending smile that felt like a jagged knife. With every encounter, the house deepened its shadows, sowing distrust in her community. Was Maple Grove hiding something more sinister beneath its picturesque surface? As her unease bloomed like wildflowers in a storm, she couldn't ignore the whispers of dark gatherings rumored to echo beyond the manicured lawns. That evening, after flipping through reports of strange disappearances, she returned to Linda, the warmth of camaraderie now buried beneath unease. Her smile felt like a mask, but the clues stirred something in her, the possibility of unearthing the truth. Then came the old family, past tenants who left hurriedly, leaving behind letters inscribed with warnings. She pored over them each night, each line tightening the knot of fear in her chest. What had they encountered? Something watched them, waited for them to slip up. Carla's heart thudded unevenly, a pulse of panic and dread echoed through her every thought. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With dread pooling in her gut, Carla felt the air around her grow thick. Every creak and groan of the house intensified. Shadows lengthened as if they took on lives of their own. The final note arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon. "You've been warned. The Watchers are awake." Fear licked at her heels, forcing her to confront the blatant truth that her sheltered home might just be a trap. The air felt electric, paranoia buzzing like white static. What lay in wait beyond her pristine front door? More than she ever anticipated, and suddenly, she could almost feel their eyes upon her. The night crept in like a shroud, cloaking Maple Grove in a darkness that felt deeper than mere absence of light. Carla sat at the kitchen table, her fingers trembling against the cold surface, lost in a whirlwind of thoughts. Each second felt stretched, like the silence was mocking her sanity. The kids were asleep upstairs, their faint breathing almost a comfort, but even that felt like part of an elaborate joke. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed through the stillness. Carla's heart jolted. It was the kind of sound that sliced through the hushed whispers in her mind. She glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Who could that be? Her pulse raced, quickening with each step she took toward the door. "Hello?" she called, her voice thin and wobbly, as she peeked through the peephole. Darkness swallowed the porch, but the silhouette of a figure stood just outside. It didn't move, only loomed, as if waiting for something. She opened the door a crack, a sliver of vulnerability. "Can I help you?" A moan rose from the figure, distorted and mournful. As the door creaked further open, she recognized Linda's face, pale and gaunt. The neighbor's usual warm smile was replaced with an expression of terror that chilled Carla to the bone. "Get inside," Linda whispered urgently, glancing over her shoulder. "They're coming." "What are you talking about?" Carla's brow furrowed, fear mixing with confusion. But as Linda stepped through the threshold, the scent of something rotten lingered in the air. "There are watchers. They've taken others. We have to hurry," Linda continued, her voice trembling. "They know we're awake." Carla felt dread candy over her thoughts, wrapping her mind in dark tendrils. "We have to wake the kids," she said, trying to contain the rising panic. But Linda clutched her arm tightly, her nails digging into Carla's flesh. "Not yet. They'll sense it. If we make a sound, it will be too late," Linda hissed, her eyes wide with fear. The air became heavy with silence, pressing against them, as they listened for any sign of the lurking danger. Outside, the wind howled, yet the world felt unnaturally still. It felt as if something, or someone, was watching from just beyond the veil of darkness. Without a word, Carla and Linda huddled in the kitchen, shadows dancing around them as the light flickered ominously. As the despair crept into her bones, a soft thudding sound began from the front porch. Steady, deliberate, like a heartbeat in rhythm with her own. The thuds echoed louder, punctuating each moment of silence, panic prickling on Carla's skin. Linda leaned closer, her breath warm against Carla's ear. "It's them, they're trying to get in." A shattering crash startled them both. The front door splintered, glass scattering like ice. Carla's stomach flipped as the darkness curled in through the jagged opening. From the depths, shadowy figures poured into her home, their shapes a mash of grotesque limbs that twisted and extended unnaturally. "Run!" Carla shouted, adrenaline slicing through her fear as she grabbed Linda's hand. Together, they bolted toward the back door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like a trap, as if the very house had turned against them. The shadows coalesced, swirling and whispering her name. She could almost make out what they were saying, taunting her fears, feeding off her panic. Desperation surged within her, and she looked back to Linda, whose face was now void of color. "Don't look away," Linda screamed, terror ripping through her voice. But Carla's gaze was drawn to the swirling darkness. What if she could understand? What if knowing could save them? One figure stepped forward, its face obscured in shadows, yet she felt its eyes penetrating through to her soul. And then the voice emerged, a hollow echo ringing through the air. "You were warned." The lights flickered once more, and the world around Carla began to distort. What lay ahead was still unseen, but there was one pressing question in her heart. Were they about to learn the truth, or had they already sealed their fate? The air grew thick like molasses, suffocating and heavy, as Carla realized they were cornered. The shadows writhed, thumping against the walls, their forms flickering like distorted film reel projections. She pressed her body against the door, feeling its splintered edges biting into her back. Her heart thudded violently, each beat echoing in her ears like a war drum, urging her to move, to escape. "Linda," she murmured, glancing at her friend whose face was a mask of despair. "What do we do?" There was no reply, only the sound of their shuddering breaths and the callous whispers of the encroaching darkness surrounding them. "Stay calm," Linda hissed, though her voice trembled. "If we don't provoke them, maybe they'll just leave." Her eyes darted, scanning the shadows that pressed closer, hungry for their fear. Suddenly, Carla felt an icy breath against her ear, so close that she could almost distinguish words. "You are not safe." The voice was a haunting melody, warped yet beautiful. She turned toward the sound, but nothing met her gaze except the encroaching dark. "Don't listen," Linda shouted. "We have to focus. On the kids. The thought of her children's sweet, innocent faces sleeping upstairs boosted her adrenaline. Carla took a deep breath, grasping at her resolve while the shadows flickered like restless flames. If we can just get to them, she said, shoving away from the door. Without warning, the shadow stepped forward, a grotesque amalgamation of limbs, twisting and stretching. Its elongated arms reached toward Carla, the air around it colder than anything she had ever sensed. You will join the others, it rasped, each word dripping with malice. Panic coursed through her veins, compelling Carla into action. We can't let them have us. Not now, she yelled, pulling at Linda. The two of them swerved away from the shadow's grasp and ran toward the staircase, desperate for escape. As they dashed toward the stairs, Carla felt the house shiver under their feet, the floorboards vibrating as if they were alive. Whispers crescendoed around them, a cacophony of voices melding into a chilling chant. Join us, but Carla wouldn't. Not today. She pushed herself harder, racing up the stairs with Linda right behind her. The kids! She gasped, ignoring the terrifying chorus. Just get to the kids, reverberated in her mind like a soft prayer. They reached the landing, breathless and wild-eyed. The hallway stretched dimly ahead, doors closed and silent. Surely they were safe in their slumber, but dread clawed at Carla's throat. She peered into the closest room, the twins' room, her heart in her throat. The sight that met her twisted her gut. The children lay still, but the shadows hung thick in the air, swirling ominously at their bedside. They hovered like predators above their prey, and amidst them flowed an unnatural glow, illuminating their resting forms in an eerie light that made Carla's blood run cold. No, she screamed, lunging forward, but Linda's grip held her back. We have to think. Think? Carla gasped, tears stinging her eyes. They're taking our babies. Not yet, Linda screamed back. We can't let them know we're here. A shadowed hand stretched, fingers curling like the gnarled branches of a dead tree toward her children. Carla's breath caught in her throat as she felt an instinctual pull. It was the darkest fear igniting within her of losing them. The moment pulsed with an unbearable tension, but just before the shadow could make contact, the lights throughout the house flickered violently. And then they went out completely. In an instant, Carla felt the world plunge into absolute darkness. Silence enveloped them like a weight, pressing down until her ears rang. She held her breath, straining to hear anything heartbeats, breaths anything. Linda, she cried into the void, but silence answered. Panic surged anew. Carla reached out blindly, feeling her way back to where she thought Linda had been. Linda, but all that remained was a dreadful quiet, a gaping maw of darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. What had happened to Linda? Were they truly alone? With her heart pounding in her chest, she ventured further into the abyss, whispering her children's names into the dark. I'll find you, promise. But as she pressed deeper, a cold realization dawned. In this darkness, she had no idea what was lurking just out of reach or how much time they had left. What would she have to sacrifice to save her children? And even if she found them, would they still be hers? The darkness was thick, smothering, wrapping around Carla like a heavy, wet blanket. Every breath felt like an effort, but she pressed on. Instinct kicked in. Her fingers grazed the cold, rough wall, guiding her through the abyss. Children, where are you? The words slipped from her lips, barely more than a breath, lost in the void. Desperation coursed through her as she stumbled forward, drawing closer to the twins' room. The silence was oppressive, amplifying the beat of her heart to an unbearable thrum in her ears. Each step felt like an eternity, the dark whispering promises of horrors unseen. Suddenly, a faint shimmer broke through the darkness, something pulsing, flickering. Light? She darted toward it, hope igniting a flame in her chest. But as she drew nearer, her heart sank. It was not the comforting glow she had hoped for. It was sickly and green, twisting like smoke, swirling dangerously in the air. Kids, she whispered, dread lacing her voice. The glow danced ahead, seeping through the crack in the open door. She hesitated, a creeping chill snaking down her spine. What was happening inside? With a rapid inhale, she edged the door open, forcing herself to look. The twins were still asleep, but the shadows throbbed at their sides now, vibrant and alive, playing out a macabre ballet. Carla's breath hitched as the shadows took form, mirrors of grotesque yet familiar faces, twisted into unnatural expressions that might have once mirrored joy. This was not their first visit. No, she shouted, charging into the room. The frightening glow pulsed brighter, shadows writhing in frenzy, as if startled by her intrusion. But then, the atmosphere shifted. The shadows seemed to lunge toward her, pulling her in like a whirlpool. She felt a tugging sensation, as if the very essence of her being was drawn from her. A tremor of icy fear washed over her, forcing her to stagger back. "Get away from them!" she screamed, holding her hands out as if she could physically push them back. There was a sudden silence, thick and suffocating. Then, a voice emerged from the shadows, a soft, sickly sweet whisper that curled around her mind. "Join us. Carla, you will feel their warmth forever join you?" She recoiled. "I'd rather die." The shadows paused as if evaluating her words, their twisted faces undulating in confusion. For a fleeting moment, the glow dimmed, and the shadows pulled back. Taking advantage of the moment, she lunged toward the twins, scooping them into her arms. They were warm and peaceful, unaware of the darkness unfolded around them. Rushing back towards the doorway, she felt their small bodies against her, a tether to reality. But just as she reached the threshold, the shadows surged forth again, hungry, angry. "No," she gasped. In a frantic reflex, she shouted, "You won, take them." A surge of adrenaline coursed through her as she pushed through the doorway, dragging the twins behind her. The thrumming glow increased in intensity, the whispers turning into shrieks of rage, drowning out any semblance of comforting noise. Suddenly, light pierced through as the hallway flooded with a blinding brightness. The shadows shrieked, warping and retreating like roaches from the light. Carla shielded her eyes, urgency gripping her as she stumbled forward. She had to escape, yet a sense of dread still clung to her. The light could not cleanse all they had encountered. Would the shadows relent, or merely bide their time? As she reached the end of the hallway, a chilling thought entered her mind. What if the darkness wasn't guided by their fear alone? What if it had a plan for her family? Emerging into the living room, she fumbled for her phone, praying for any kind of revelation, a sign they could escape. But just as she turned it on, static crackled violently, an alien voice clamoring through the speakers. "We're coming for you." The weight of impending doom settled on her chest. She had saved her children, but at what cost? What awaited them in the next moment? In the eyes of the shadows watching from the corners of the room, the answer seemed clear. There was no escape. What had she truly awakened? The sound of static hung in the air, a cold reminder of the threat that lurked beyond the walls. Carla's heart raced, each beat amplifying the crushing fear that enveloped her. She clutched the twins tightly, their small bodies still warm against her chest, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. What would she do? "Stay close," she whispered, forcing her voice to tremble less. "We have to find a way out." She glanced around the room, searching for any semblance of safety. The shadows had receded, but the unsettling whisper of their presence lingered, a dark promise that they weren't done. Carla moved toward the nearest window, heart pounding as she tried to shake the disorienting fog still clouding her mind. The night seemed to stretch infinitely, thick black clouds rolling overhead. Rain began to pound against the glass like a frantic drum, almost as if the sky itself was sobbing for her. "Mommy?" one of the twins murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. She hushed, finger pressed to her lips. She didn't dare look back. She could almost feel the shadows crawling, waiting for her to falter. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just hold on tight." As she unlatched the window, a creeping dread coiled deep in her gut. Was it really okay? The last thing she wanted was to leave the safety of the house, yet the darkness felt like a living entity, stretching hungrily toward her. The window creaked open, allowing the rain to surge inside with a gust of wind that chilled her to the bone. "We have to go," she said, determination igniting a spark in her belly. Now, with half-hearted glances back at the shadows that danced ever closer, she climbed out. The rain plastered her hair to her head, soaking her instantly, but her focus was on running. The twins squirmed in her grip, confusion painted on their faces. "Where are we going?" "Just run, darling," she snapped, her voice edged with panic. "We can't stay here." The three of them stepped onto the slick pavement, the cold, sharp bite of wet concrete shocking against her bare feet. Instantly, she felt vulnerable. A gust of wind howled, and for a moment, she swore she heard laughter mixed with the chaos. The shadows were creeping out of the house, merging with the rain-soaked surroundings. They seemed to revel in the chaos, reaching out to her as if trying to beckon her back into the dark embrace. "Mommy!" the other twin cried. "They want us." The words sent a jolt of icy fear through her. "No, they can't have us." She sprinted down the driveway, adrenaline fueling her lungs, fear anchoring her grasp on reality. As they hit the street, headlights cut through the darkness. A car, her salvation, no, their salvation. "Stop!" She waved her arms wildly as she dashed to the center of the road. Anxiety bubbled in her throat, choking her with the weight of the eerie urgency. But as the bright lights bore down, the car swerved inexplicably, veering off course before disappearing into the blackness. "No!" she yelled, fists clenching in despair. Suddenly, the world surged forward, the night rippled as shadows gathered around them like a storm cloud, thicker and darker than any night she had ever known. Carla felt overwhelmed, memories of the twins' laughter creeping into her mind, because this wasn't just about her anymore. She couldn't let go of the hope that fueled her, that perhaps this wasn't the end. But even as she clutched the twins tightly, whispering comforting words, a new sound broke through the faint jingle of bells. Like chimes in the wind, they danced through the air, echoing with a disturbing sweetness. In that moment, clarity struck. The shadows weren't just adrift. They were calling to something more sinister. What had she awakened? And what would it take to silence the darkness that had turned its eyes upon them? The cold rain lashed at Carla's face as she pushed forward, dragging the twins with her. Each step felt heavier, as if the darkness was reaching out, grasping at her legs, urging her to stumble. The jingling of the bells echoed around her, weaving through the heavy air like a haunting lullaby. "Mommy, I'm scared," one of the twins squealed, his little voice almost lost in the tempest. She squeezed their hands tighter, gathering every ounce of courage she had left. "Stay with me," she shouted, her voice barely audible over the storm. Panic surged like fire in her veins, igniting her instincts to protect. They ran through the pelting rain, seeking shelter. The street lamps flickered sporadically, illuminating twisted branches that clawed at the night sky, reminiscent of the shadows behind them. Each flicker filled her with dread, convinced she would see the dark figures emerge from the veil of night. "Over there," she shouted, spotting a shadowy storefront up ahead, a flicker of light promising refuge. It had to be safe. It had to be. As they approached, she noticed the faded sign swaying in the wind. "Old Curiosities." The grimy glass door was ajar, creaking ominously as she pushed it open. A musty smell tinged the air, like ancient memories pressed between the dusty shelves. Shelves filled with oddities and relics that seemed to whisper secrets forgotten through time. "Mommy, what is this place?" one twin asked, wide-eyed. The other let go of her hand and darted toward a collection of peculiar trinkets. "Don't touch anything," Carla snapped, heart racing again. She couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were watching from the edges, eager to snatch them back into the darkness. She caught the other twin by the arm and quickly pulled him closer, scanning the dim light for any signs of safety. "Look," he pointed to a large, ornate mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. Its surface shimmered strangely, reflecting more than just the clutter of the shop. Carla's heart sank as she leaned closer. The image inside was somehow wrong. Distorted faces, stretched and twisted, scrabbled for release, their mouths forming silent screams. "Mommy!" the twins cried, hiding behind her. The terror in their eyes matched her own. For the first time, doubt gnawed at her resolve. What if they weren't safe here? Suddenly, the bells chimed again, louder this time. They resonated through the air, reverberating in her bones, awakening something deep within the shop. Carla turned as the door slammed shut with a deafening crash, the sound echoing like a final verdict. The once inviting curiosity shop transformed. Shadows twisted and elongated, creeping toward them. Objects rattled on shelves as if possessed, and the air grew thick with a palpable malice. "No, no." Carla backed away instinctively, pulling the twins closer. "Get back." The atmosphere crackled with tension as the dim light dimmed even further, suffocating any hope. Out of the shadows, figures began to form, gliding toward them with unsettling grace, their faces obscured but their intentions clear. Then she heard a voice, smooth and deep, whispering like silk. "You've brought the children, darling." How thoughtful. Carla froze, blood running cold. "Run!" she screamed, shoving the twins ahead, heart pounding as the figures closed in. They sprinted deeper into the shop, desperate for escape. But as the darkness swallowed them, Carla's thoughts shouted in unison. What had they unleashed? They were trapped in a space where shadows no longer sought the light but sought to claim them for their own. In the cacophony of chaotic whispers that echoed about, one chilling truth became clear. This had only just begun. What would it take to fight the darkness closing in? Would it be the twins' screams that summoned the shadows or their silence? The shadows lunged toward them, stretching long and twisted, reaching for the twins like skeletal fingers. Carla's heart hammered in her chest as she dragged the twins along, slipping through narrow aisles cluttered with strange objects. Every step echoed with the unsettling jingle of the bells above. The air thickened, filled with an oppressive weight that made it hard to breathe. "Where do we go, Mommy?" one twin whimpered, his voice shaking with fear. "Anywhere but here," she gasped, scanning for an exit. She could feel the figures moving, gliding like smoke behind them, their laughter low and chilling. A flicker of light caught her eye, a single bulb swinging from above, casting fleeting shadows across the walls. She spotted an exit at the far end of the shop. But as she sprinted toward it, the bulbs began to extinguish one by one, plunging them deeper into darkness. One moment there was light, the next, shadows consumed everything. "Stay close," Carla commanded, pulling the twins tighter to her side. The vast store felt alive, insatiably feeding off their terror. She felt the ancient shelves vibrating around them, whispering secrets that sent shivers down her spine. They reached the door, but it felt sticky, as if woven into the framework of the shop itself. She pushed on it, only to hear it creak and groan like a tortured being. "Come on," she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. "No, Mommy." Both boys clung to her legs, eyes wide with terror. They could sense the danger, taste the despair in the air. "I don't want to go back." Before she could reassure them, the figures surged closer, their forms flickering like dying flames. One figure stepped into the light, and Carla recoiled. It looked like a woman, but her face was devoid of features, just a flat surface that seemed to shift and shimmer with the shadows behind her. "Join us," Carla the figure purred, the voice smooth and inviting yet dripping with malice. "You have gifts. We can show you the way." The twin-s whimpers filled the space, a siren-s song of imminent doom. The woman reached a hand toward her, and at that moment, Carla felt something strange, a pull, almost compulsion. It was as if her very essence was being drawn to the darkness. "No." Struggling against the tide of temptation, she pushed the twins behind her, rooted in resolve. "You'll never take my children." With a surge of adrenaline, she yanked the door again, this time with newfound strength. The wood shuddered in response but began to yield. Light seeped through the cracks, illuminating the shop in a harsh glare. "Run," she howled, feeling the energy shift. She braced herself against the door, forcing it open wider. They pushed through just as the darkness lunged again, howling in fury, and finally stumbled into the alley beyond. Carla turned to see the figures clawing at the now-closed door, whipping around in rage, their whispers escalating into a cacophony of anger. "Mommy, what is happening?" The twins cried, still panting, fear clinging to them like sweat. "I don't know," she gasped, scanning her surroundings. The storm subsided, but the air remained heavy, laden with echoes of what they had narrowly escaped. Far down the alley, an ominous fog began to creep in, curling at their feet. "Maybe we're safe now?" one twin suggested, his voice wavering with uncertainty. Carla didn't say anything. She could still feel them, the shadows lurking just out of sight, like a predator watching its prey. The nagging sensation that they hadn't seen the last of the old curiosities filled her mind. "Let us go home fast," Carla snapped, steering them away from the darkness. But as they rushed down the alley, an unmistakable sound rose behind them, the jingles of the bells once more, echoing through the stillness, that haunting lullaby beckoning them back. And with that sound, it became clear their escape was just the beginning of something far darker. But where would they hide when the night called to them? As they fled, the air turned cold, a frigid breeze that snaked around them, trying to pull them back toward the darkness. Carla's breath came in short, sharp gasps, each inhale tasting of old smoke and something sickly sweet, like rotting fruit. The twins, wide-eyed and trembling, kept close, their fingers intertwined tightly with hers. "Please, Mommy, don't let them get us," one of them whimpered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I won't, I promise," Carla replied, though uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. Panic surged through her veins, a steady drumbeat that urged her to move faster. She turned down another alley, the brick walls looming like giants ready to swallow them whole. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, teasing, taunting, whispering her name, desperate for her attention. "Mommy!" The other twin jerked to a stop, pointing ahead. "Look!" Barely illuminated by the faint glow of a nearby streetlight stood an old church, its structure crumbling but oddly inviting. Symbols and emblems engraved in the stone looked like distorted faces, their features locked in a perpetual scream. A large wooden door hung ajar, swaying gently as if beckoning them inside. "Should we go in there?" one twin asked, dread lacing his tone. "Maybe it's safer than the streets," Carla breathed, the idea settling like lead in her stomach. She didn't believe in salvation anymore, but they had to try something. The sound of jingling bells grew louder, echoing through the narrow passageway, a sinister chorus that sent chills racing down her spine. "Okay, let us go," she said, gripping the twins' hands and darting toward the door. They slipped inside just as the shadows rushed behind them, filling the alley with a breath of darkness that swept past like a tidal wave. The interior of the church was dim, illuminated only by flickering candles that fought valiantly against the dark. Dust motes danced lazily in the air, and the scent of mildew permeated everything. A thick layer of silence wrapped around them, heavy and suffocating. Carla could hear the rapid beating of her heart, the twins' breaths quickening, a symphony of fear. "Hello?" she called, her voice echoing unnervingly off the stone walls. No answer came. The church felt empty, but the sense of being watched pressed down on her. "Stay close. We'll look for a way out," she instructed, though the words felt hollow. They stepped further into the church, glancing at the rows of pews that sat like sentinels, each one hiding secrets within its shadowed corners. An altar loomed ahead, draped in a dark cloth that seemed too heavy to be fabric. As they approached, an unnatural chill filled the air. Something was wrong, very wrong. "Mommy, it feels weird in here," one twin exclaimed, shivering. "I know. We just need to find another exit." Before she could finish her sentence, the candles blew out simultaneously, plunging them into darkness. Carla's heart raced as she fumbled for the twins, panic clawing at her throat. "Stay right here," she shouted, though her own voice trembled. Then, a soft whisper folded into the silence, curling around them like smoke. "You can't run from us," the twins gasped, and Carla felt the pull, heavy and undeniable, as if the shadows had come alive, pushing her toward the altar. A figure began to materialize before them, a tall silhouette, gradually stepping into the flickering hints of light that remained. The air grew thick, almost sweet, filled with secrets unsaid. "Join us," the figure said, voice dripping with an echo that froze the marrow in her bones. Anything resembling hope slipped from her grasp. The twins clutched at her legs, fear radiating from them like heat. "No," she yelled, but her voice sounded distant, as if she were trapped in a dream. The candles flickered back to life slowly, illuminating the figure more clearly. Carla's breath hitched. What she saw made her stomach drop. The woman from the shop stood there, her expression agonizingly blank, yet insatiably inviting. "Join us, Carla, your gifts can save you." They hadn't escaped. This was no sanctuary. And then she understood. The true test had just begun. What price would she pay to protect them? What would she be willing to sacrifice when the darkness offered power? A scream pierced the air, and it wasn't hers. A new shadow erupted from the back of the church, rushing towards them. In this place, with nowhere left to run, how long could she resist the call? The shadow surged forward, a mass of writhing darkness that seemed to pulse and breathe. Carla's instincts kicked in. She grabbed the twins and spun them around, desperate to find any route of escape. They stumbled back, the cold stone floor slick beneath their feet. Panic clawed at her throat, thick and suffocating. "What is that?" one twin cried, his voice trembling. "Just stay with me," Carla snapped, her own heart hammering wildly against her ribcage. She could feel the creeping dread, like icy fingers wrapping around her spine. The church pulsed around them, the walls closing in, a living entity hungry for their fear. The figure no, the woman remained calm amidst the chaos. She smiled, yet the absence of warmth made Carla's skin crawl. "You've always known, Carla. You can save them. Just reach out." But her mind was a whirlwind of doubt. The whispers intensified, filling her brain with promises, each sweeter than the last. Thoughts of protection, of power, of sacrifice, each one wrapped in layers of seduction, begging her to listen. Clara pushed the twins further behind her, shielding them as the room twisted like a funhouse. "Make it stop," the other twin yelled, tears spilling down his cheeks, his grip on her hand tightening. The silhouette surged closer, and a rush of air flew past, cold and damp. Carla felt as if she were in a nightmare, where every desperate attempt to wake up only deepened her into that dark abyss. She took a step back, and the altar loomed even larger, shadowy and oppressive. "Look inside yourself," the woman cooed, her voice a haunting lullaby. "You know what you can do. You can change everything." The altar seemed to beckon, a deep void swirling beneath the fabric, urging her to step forward and embrace its promise. She could protect them, but at what cost? The echoes of her children's fear drove spikes deep into her chest. Her visions darkened, and she fought for clarity through the wavering darkness. With a sudden roar, the shadow pulled back, but it surged toward them again, rapidly morphing into a grotesque form, a mockery of what humanity should be. The church quietly vibrated with an energy that felt alive and relentless. A sickening realization sank into her gut. This place wasn't forgotten. It was a trap, festering. "Run!" she screamed uncontrollably. She yanked the twins and bolted down the aisle, the shadows hissing like snakes in pursuit. The echoes of the bell chimed madly, filling every inch of the air with insanity. They burst into the crossing hall, breaths heaving, electricity crackling around them. Carla stumbled upon a massive stained glass window, fractured and weeping light, and froze. Its images distorted her memories, twisting the past into something ghastly. Moments of joy, of laughter, of love. And suddenly she understood. There was pain woven in the fabric of every frame, shadows lingering just out of sight. Carla turned to the twins, their faces pale and still shrouded in fear. "We have to find a way out." But before she could think where to run, a soft whisper slipped around them again, warmer this time, cradling her mind gently. "You can join us, Carla, a family forever." No. She clamped her hands over her ears, dragging the twins closer. They stood forward against the encroaching dark, her heart thumping a thudding bass against the horror that surrounded them. But even as she fought, the walls shifted, stretching, warping as if the very church were alive, hungry for what they could never comprehend. Suddenly, a path emerged, glimmering in shades of blue light that flickered like fireflies. "Mommy, look!" The twins tugged at her, pointing at what could be salvation. But she hesitated, grappling with the truth. What if salvation wasn't waiting? What if the darkness offered something more sinister? "Do we trust it?" she whispered to herself, but the words felt heavy, like a shroud pressing down. Before she could answer her own question, a low growl resonated behind them. The shadows curled and thrashed like wild beasts, hungry and howling. Was it already too late to escape? Or would the light lead them to freedom? Or something worse? Carla squared her shoulders, a spark igniting within her. "Let us go." But as they took a step toward the glowing exit, the ominous whisper returned, loud and chaotic, an invitation wrapped in terror. And at that moment, she knew. The true horror wasn't just what lay ahead, but what they were leaving behind. Would they really lose more than they could ever find? The corridor of flickering lights drew them forward, urging them to trust the glimmering path. Carla fought against the tightening dread in her chest. She pulled the twins closer, willing every ounce of courage to visit her love for them. This was their only chance. "Keep moving," she urged, desperation lacing her tone as they stepped onto the glowing pathway, which pulsed gently beneath their feet. Each step felt like they were gliding through time, moments of laughter flitting past like snatches of a long-lost dream. But chaos echoed behind them, shadows writhing and howling, resentful of their retreat. "Mommy, we're too late," one twin cried, his voice cracking with fear. "No, just keep going," she shouted, determination blazing behind her fear. Her heart raced, pumping with an urgency driven by love. They were not lost yet. She would not let fear dictate her fate. As they raced down the path, branches of sorrow reached out from the walls, grasping at her memories, distant echoes of joy now tangled in somber shadows. The whispers grew louder, voices warping and blending, promising comfort and family. "Join us, be part of something great." "Shut up," Carla screamed back, the strength in her voice surprising even herself. Each step shattered the silence, slicing through the omnipresent whispers that tangled around her heart. She had to break free. She had to protect her children. The glow brightened as they approached the end of the corridor, a doorway pulsing with life. As they neared, an icy wind swept against them. With one last glance back at the shadows clawing at the edges of their world, Carla thrust herself and the twins through the opening. They tumbled out into a light unlike any they had seen, a calm expanse washed in golden hues, warm and inviting. She landed on soft ground, the twins snuggling into her, wide-eyed and breathless. "Is it over?" one of them whispered, gripping her tightly. "I think so," Carla began, looking around at the soothing landscape of rolling hills and vibrant blossoms. But unease began to settle in again as she noticed the shadows lingering at the far edge, hovering at the threshold, still watching, waiting. "I knew they wouldn't leave," Carla muttered, her heart sinking, an ominous heaviness settling in her stomach. They had escaped death, but the darkness still held on to them, its tendrils threatening to curl back in. "We have to get away from here," she urged the twins. They nodded, still trembling but encouraged by their mother's fierce determination. They took off towards the horizon, feeling the warmth of the sun coaxing the fear from their bones. But the shadows shifted as they ran, stretching long and thin, always at their backs, never letting go, just hiding in plain sight. Their whispers became coherent, trilling up through the valley. "You cannot escape. You are a part of us now." The ground trembled as they sprinted, Carla's mind spinning frantically. How could she fight something that needed her fear? Her love? She pushed that thought aside, focusing instead on creating strength from love alone. "Hold on tight," she yelled as they pushed through the last of the enchanted path. To their surprise, they were suddenly engulfed in bright light, much warmer and gentler than before. In moments, they cascaded to a stop beneath a great oak tree, its branches sprawling wide like welcoming arms, arching above them, cradling them in shades of green. Breathless and wild-eyed, they clung together, shielded beneath the tree's embrace. Carla looked at her twins, feeling the warmth radiating from their little bodies. This was a sanctuary, she thought, but the shadows lurked too close, a reminder that it wasn't over. You may find solace, but you will never lose us, they hissed, angered by their defiance. No, Carla shouted vehemently, her voice ringing with the truth of her purpose. Determination filled her. She would not let them win. She dropped to her knees, clutching her children close, breathing the evergreen scent suffusing the air around them. We are strong. Together, Carla declared, summoning the power. A family, the light of hope surging within her. The shadows took a step back, startled. The sun shone brighter, spilling warmth over them, banishing the encroaching dark. The shadows rippled, caught between a surge of light and the empowered love surrounding them. And as the brilliant light cascaded down, Carla felt the grip of fear dissolve. The shadows shrieked, for the warmth melted their grasp. With a powerful scream, the darkness pulsated and thrashed before dissipating into thin air, disorientated and lost. As the echoes faded away, a calm serenity enveloped the trio. They could finally breathe. The looming shadows had retreated, silenced. Did we win, Mommy? The twins asked, their voices still shaky. Carla smiled, tears of relief spilling down her cheeks. For now, yes, but we must stay strong. Love is our light, and against the dark, we will never be alone. Embraced by the great oak, they drew strength from one another, their bond sealing against the darkness that still swirled in whispers just beyond their reach. Yet the true victory lay within them, a newfound courage and an unbreakable chain of love that would reignite hope, warding off the shadows for good. As they sat surrounded by the light, a profound sense of peace enveloped them, knowing they'd beaten back the dark at least for now. Carla drew them close, a fierce guardian of their bliss, ready to face whatever lay ahead, but knowing that together, they could conquer anything. And with that thought lingering in the air, they softly closed their eyes, letting serenity wash over them, ready for a new day. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to fuel the algorithm. Your support matters. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What did you think? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Real fans know how important it is to support the channel,